Hello, this is Peter Colla from Spiritual Therapies with Peter and Anna Colla. If you've seen me perhaps on David Nino Rodriguez, which I started doing shows a couple of months ago with him, he actually found me and stimulated me to come out of the foxholes and hidden refines of personal therapeutics with people and try to bring my treatments more to a public scenario by sharing them with the public in these videos. And then I've also been on with Nicholas Van Yemen and even with Charlie Ward and Prime Minister. And I hope to be on those shows again. I've done a few videos, quite a few now, that are available on our site, which is Spiritual Therapies with Peter and Anna Colla. I also write a blog, and I've been writing blogs since 2010. And those are all posted on paulorpeter.com. I have taken the majority of those blogs and I have put them in a collection of books. And one of the books is called Heal Yourself for God's Sake. I've written two books, actually three, but these are the two I promote: Heal Yourself for God's Sake and Quantum Ascension. I'll talk about these books a little bit here in a bit. But today's show, I am actually putting this together pretty late in the evening. I was going to post a different show talking about this and trying to help people a little bit with easing their fear that surrounds this, but more so after hearing today the David Nino Rodriguez and Juan O Seven show this evening. It prompted me to stay up late and do one, especially for David and maybe for Juan, to talk a little bit along the lines of spiritual therapies that Juan so eloquently mentioned in his show. I love Juan O Seven. I've never met him, but his calm touch of enthusiasm in this time of war that we live, coupled with Nino's somewhat fighter aggressive style, it makes for a pretty informative 1-2 punch, as it were. Today, this particular show, I was going to call the March of the Living Dead to talking about this thing and some of the plans that they actually had and how that was incorporated into that. But instead, I decided to make this the ode to all who have fallen. David has had recently a death in his family. I have had deaths in my family. My wife, Anna, has had tragic losses in her friend with one of her best friends. And many people that I know throughout the environment and the world of just from my close friends here, everybody is lost somebody or knows somebody who has been a tragic victim of this, what we now find to be the end times war. Now, why do I call it that? I've been a practicing medical professional for 35 years. 15 years or so ago, now maybe 13, 14, I had my own near-death experience, we might call it. My actual near-death experience took place actually with the death of my first wife. And that would be now nearly 30, 20, 28 years ago. But at the time of that, I went into such a shock that the actual near-death experience didn't take place until 2008, 2009. At which time I had two choices: give up, die, or look up to God. I chose to look up to God in desperation. It wasn't in any kind of faith or any kind of obligation because I was a stout church-going person. On the contrary, in desperation, and God answered. And that led me down a path of trying to put God back into the healing scenario. I am a medical professional. I've treated thousands of people for 35 years. I have had my own practices. I've had my own offices employed. I've had supervised 150 therapists, 250 nurses, interns, etc., directed clinics. And in all this time, only recently did I start to put God into the scenario. And when I did, not without even knowing why or how, I knew why, because God answered me on that, all that near fatal day back in 2008, when I called out to him, and so I decided I have to put him back in somehow, some way. So I put him in any way I could. First, it was just simple prayer, and then later it was other ways, with touch, with things that he brought to my attention: sound, water, light, different things like this that I went through a course about 10 years. I actually talk about that in this book. I describe in this book, the Heal Yourself for God's Sake book. This is a tabulation of those various attempts, different things, and what the miracles that, sorry, I'm sniffing. I just sneezed a little while ago. And the results, some of the miracles that I saw, I write them down. God told me to write, so I write. And wrote those things down, and then decided I was going to put it in a book form so other people could read about it and apply it to themselves. Not so that they could buy the book, but so that they could learn to do it and wouldn't have to come and ask me. They could just do it. Like, how do I apply water in a godly fashion that could help me, help heal me? How do I apply sound? How do I apply light? How do I apply faith, fasting, belief, touch, etc.? All explained in these various chapters of this book. I printed it, self-printed it, sent it to dozens of authors. Nobody wanted it, was interested in it. Everybody told me the same thing: self-publish, and when you have 10,000 sales, then you come see us and we'll print it for you. Well, I don't need you then. But anyways, so the first few years, I think the first 2 years, I sold one copy. One friend bought it, a friend of mine, Frank. My only sales, my one sale. And then lo and behold, Nino came along, and I started working with him. And he lifted it up one day and showed it on his show, and before you know it, it was selling like crazy. And I sold thousands of copies, both books. After I wrote this book, during the comorbid lockdown, I started asking God, how does it work? How does it work? How does it work on an energy basis? How does the ascension, the vibration, all of these things, how does it work? Since we're all made of the same material, how does that work? If you can understand it on an elementary basis, it's easy to understand it on a practical basis to make it work for yourself. So I explain that. I don't explain it. God explains it. He explained it to me. I write it down for you. I've reread it a few times, some of the things, and I actually flabbergasted that at some of the things that are written. Let's get closer. So today, Ode to the Fallen. You know, it's quite a pickle that we find ourselves in today with these things. I've never really trusted them. That has something to do with the fact that perhaps one of the doctors, one of my best friends, we kind of came to the conclusion, this is back in 2000. No, this would have been in 1980, 88, yeah, when I first started my practice, 89. When one of my best friends, a family practitioner, he was convinced they really didn't do anything. As a matter of fact, it came under his attention. I talked about this in an earlier video, that they might have even had special doses of the flu, for VIPs that were different than for other people. He found this out. And when he found that out, he thought, well, wait a minute, if it's not the same for everybody, then how can I justify giving it to people? And he stopped doing it and stopped. And that put kind of both of us down a track of evaluation. Another thing that I remember him talking about was the fact that he was perplexed at the fact that, you know, when he started giving people blood pressure medicine, suddenly they would start to develop other issues. For example, cholesterol. And then suddenly he'd have to give them cholesterol medicine, and then they'd suddenly be having diabetic issues later. And it would seem that this pattern was happening over and over again throughout his patients. And he was the first one that kind of told me, and maybe one of the only doctors, that I would stay away from allergy medicine. They don't seem to help. They seem to actually make people more allergic to other things. I can say now, with my experience in practical medicine and my time working prior as immunology, that's what I did before I was physical therapist, that is my opinion that many of the modern medicines today are synthesized they have a small component of material that helps for the thing that you're taking it for. Let's say an anti-inflammatory medication. And it may have an active ingredient of a few milligrams, 25 milligrams, which is not even 200 milligrams is not a lot considered the size of the pills that you take. For your information, a gram, if you take your finger and you put it in a glass of water and you lift it up and one single drop drops off your finger, that's a gram at sea level. It's a constant. So that's 1 gram. A milligram is 1/1000th of that gram. A microgram is 1/1000th of that 1/1000th. Okay, so it's a millionth microgram. Many medicines are in the micrograms. Many of them are in milligrams. None of them are in grams. And yet you take a pill that is at least 3, 4, 5 grams. What is the rest of that material? Delivery system. And then the fact that it has to be made out of oil-based, crude oil-based, which is a toxin, by the way. It became evident to me and to many of my colleagues that many of the medicines that we were taking, many of the foods that we're eating, many of the things that we were being exposed to, especially chemicals, were bringing in components into our bodies. And when these components would come together, they would form complex chemical compounds that could cause the diseases that we are suffering from today. Did I just say that perhaps many of the diseases that we suffer from today are constructs of things brought to us through our food, through our water, through our air, and through our these and these? Yes. Now, spiritual therapies with Peter and Anna Colla. There is, as you've probably seen other of my videos, we are taught that the physical is everything. Our mind has control a little bit over our body. And the spirit is this little thing that sits in the middle, little thing that's on your shoulder. One's whispering to you to go to the bar, to the strip club, and the other one is, no, be good, don't, stay home, pet the dog. The truth is that the physical is so infinitely small. The mind is like the Library of Congress, but the spirit is like the oceans. Very briefly, to review, if you were to take just the physical components of the atoms, just the physical parts, and push them together to where they touch, the actual physical parts of the protons, neutrons, and electrons, you could put every atom of your body inside the diameter of one single atom. And that's with protons, neutron size. But if you were to put it and actually make it to the sound inside and put them next to each other, you could squish all the energy or all the sound, the actual physical sound of the entire universe, if they were touching each other, into the space of one single atom. It's true. That is the essence of quantum physics. Okay? That's how small the physicalities and the spaces in between, even just the structures in the atom, and we're not even talking about the sound itself that makes up the structures, we're just talking about the structures, is so infinitely great that you can't even, the two parts cannot physically, you put a basketball size neutron or proton in Chicago, the first electron, which is the size of a ping pong ball, is in St. Louis, 600-700 miles away. Ping pong ball away from a basketball. Space in between, not anything like air, space, empty space. What fills that space? God, consciousness, the spirit. We are in an end times war. Jesus himself said, you fight not principalities, armies, or battles of this earth, but actually principalities and beings and battles of the air, unseen and far vast compared to the physicality of our earth in comparison. God, one time I asked God, show me how it is. I always, that's what I do. You have not because you ask not, so I ask. Person walks into my office, has some kind of strange ailment that I've never seen before, like maybe his arm and his leg was ripped off, and now I got to try to figure out what to do with him. So I ask God. I pray very softly, God, what I do? He shows me in the form of an image or a vision or reminds me of some TV show I seen one time or some story, and then boom, I just know what to do. I do it, and it turns out to be the right thing most of the time because I asked him. You ask not, you have not because you ask not. So I ask. I do that all the time. So I asked about this. Show me what our true relationship of our essence is, if it's not a big physical. You are as a cork floating on the ocean. Your body is the cork. Just your body. Your mind is like a library, and everything that happens to the cork, every ray of light that touches it, every water molecule that bathes its body, every fish that nibbles on it, every nutrient that comes inside its mouth, every sun ray, every cold wind, every wave that splashes around are all listed. Some on some shelves that feel good and some on some shelves that feel bad. So that you can reference as you get older. Oh yeah, that means this, this means that, that means this. All I can learn. But how you feel about it, what you want, what attracts you, what you desire, whether you desire to go to good or you desire evil in your life. That is the spirit. And that is as great as the ocean itself. It doesn't mean you are the ocean. No, you're a drop of water in the ocean that has spread out through the whole ocean. So you are as large as the ocean and part of that ocean, which is God. Now, we are in an end times battle between good and evil. Anybody who doesn't see that, or doesn't believe that, or doesn't believe that God somehow is right now fighting against the devil for us, might as well just flick this video off because you ain't going to get anything else out of it. I'm serious. But if you believe that, like I do, that we're in an end times battle, let me explain further. If we are in an end times battle, and this is primarily a war between good and evil, that means it is a spiritual war, primarily. Jesus said the majority of battles are up there in the heavenlies. Okay, he said that 2,000 years ago. But he's talking about now more than ever. We take this. We're told we have to take this. And then everybody's afraid. Should I take it? Should I not? Do I have to take it? Well, what if I took it? What if my mom took it? What if my kids are forced to take it? If they go to school, involuntary consent. Just by me sending them to school, I'm consenting. Well, what if they give it to them? Well, let's answer some of those questions. Today, I watched my good friend, David Nino Rodriguez, struggle with those questions with Juan O Seven. And all of these proteins, things that are spiking all together and forming in our body, okay? That can cause all kinds of problems, okay? Well, what if I told you that they've been putting that same stuff in our foods for a generation? A generation. What if I tell you that they've been putting things in these flu shots for a generation, if not more? All you have to do is look at the CDC or the World Health Organization charts of contraindications or adverse effects And you'll see as the years have gone by that the number of adverse effects from these has gone, what started out as only maybe a few hundred a year, started spiking to a few thousand, to this last year to well over 2.5 million cases in 1 year. More cases of ill or contra effects from these than all the other years combined of the last 80, 90 years that they've been doing them. Well, okay. But there's more people taking them. That's true. There are more people taking them. In 1 year, more than all the 80 years. A lot of people, almost every child in the world takes the polio. They haven't had that many adverse effects. So that's a lot of people. Almost every person in the world has had it. Mumps, rubella, measles, flu shots. Yeah, they get them. They haven't had that many contraindications. So there's been a lot of people that have had it. Polio. Yeah. And that's not even talking about some of the more SARS and some of the other ones that they've had. But they've spiked and they've gone up now to 2.5 million. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I read a report, a very famous doctor, that proved that she found a form of cancer that was rare and only a few people in the world had it. But it was very lethal. So they took blood samples and they found an odd chemical in the blood, a very complex chain of polypeptides, I believe it was, that could not be accounted for. They were not made by the human body. That means they brought in from outside. But the problem was these people were in diverse places at various corners of the globe. When she further analyzed it, she was able to figure out that portions of the polypeptide they received from food, portions they received from this, and portions they received from a poison such as a pesticide or something like that. And that's what they all three had in common. All the test subjects all had in common. Published her work, I believe it was with Johns Hopkins, against the advice of her colleagues. They told her, don't do it. But she did it anyway. Of course, they found her suicided in her room, 3 bullets in the head and beaten, unrecognizable, but was deemed a suicide, like a lot of these suicides. The point here is that they have been trying, and with somewhat ill success, to mimic what God alone can do, and that is bring a plague upon the people. See, because as much as you would hate to say it, God has control over life and death. Yeah, we can go out and murder. They can murder. Of course they can. People can do that. But when it comes to innocence just dying, God has control of that. Well, then why would God bring a plague at all? Well, sometimes like Pharaoh, he doesn't listen. Some kings don't listen. They follow Baal. They start sacrificing children. They start doing things like that. They do things they're not supposed to. And the people suffer. Pharaoh wouldn't listen. He got a lot of choices, a lot of warnings, frogs and blood stuff and all these different things. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't listen. Finally, they had to bring the plague. And unfortunately, innocents died because of that dumbass. Hey, he's the leader. We got a leader in there right now that's a dumbass. Hope our country doesn't suffer from it, but I think it already is. man, my point is, man can try to mimic God, but it ain't going to work. They can create something in a lab, which we know they created in a lab. And maybe in a lab, it has 100% fatality. As a matter of fact, if the scientist even smells it, he's dead, you know? So it must work. Open it up and put it out there in the market, and it's going to go all over the world. Except it doesn't. Does it work? Why? Because God said it. He's not going to allow it. He gets to decide when there's a plague. They don't get to decide. If they could decide, if the devil could decide on a plague, he'd have killed us off centuries ago. He'd have killed off the whole world before Jesus came along. Why wait until Jesus comes? Kill them all off after Noah. You know, hey, if he could kill everybody off when Caesar was in control. Why wait? See, that's the thing. He can't, because he can't. He only can put it into plan. It can only be put into plan. And then hopes for the worst. That's what this is. Yeah, they have put in there DNA messenger stuff that is supposed to produce things that are probably not that good for us. Why is it working? Why isn't it working the way they thought it was? Why do they keep needing to put other booster shots and all these different things? Because it's not working. It's not working the way they wanted to. Got to come up with another. Okay. Well, they put this other stuff in there. And they got to put that carbon stuff. You know, I won't get into it. What it's called, you know what I'm talking about. They put that in there, that black stuff that reacts to the G stuff. Hey, they put that in there and it doesn't work. And then they put in, you know, they put in, you know what else they discovered? They put in a couple of protozoan parasites. For your information, those are small little parasites. If they get in their body, they start multiplying, and then they attack different parts. They put in this one called Trypanosoma cruzi, which is also known as Chakra's disease, or Americana trypanomyosis. My ass. It is a disease that is spread by little bugs that get into the chicken shit. And the problem is, if you get this disease, not only does it give you boils all over your body, a lot of pain, nauseousness, flu, and if not treated early on, leads to death. But it also can cause myocarditis. Myocarditis, wait a minute, isn't that one of the things that has been causing? Yeah, myocarditis is one of the things. An infection of the heart tissue. And then swells, your heart swells, and aka you get a heart attack. Young people get heart attacks. Athletes get heart attacks. Anybody that has even a slight problem with their heart attacks, blood clotting. Those are all symptoms of that particular situation. Then there's another one, Trypanosoma brucei, African sleep sickness. Some of the same symptoms, not as much in the heart. This one attacks the nerves, and it kind of messes up your ability to sleep. You can sleep, you keep falling asleep during the day, and you can't sleep at night. The only problem is because you're not getting any sleep, really. You kind of walk around like a zombie at night. So they call it the African sleep sickness, because people walk around like zombies, like the March of the Living Dead. Funny how all of these movies, they make these, you know, World War Z and all this, some disease that causes people to turn into like zombies. African sleep sickness. Now, why would they put that in there? For the outward chance that you might go to Africa, to the Congo, and you need to build up resistance for this stuff? Brilliant. Or that maybe you're cleaning out your chicken coop and you got to build up your resistance. So you better you get the Trypanosoma cruzi so that you don't get that. Build up resistance. Baloney. There's no reason for it to be in there, but it is. The link below. I'll put a link where you can find it. You know what? I have it on my Telegram. Paul or Peter Telegram, or the Colla Telegram, where it shows the article. I have it on there, and it has the breakdown of everything that's in it, including those parasites. Now, why would they do that? And why all of these different attacks? Why? Because they have to attack from multiple fronts to win the war. They hope to win the war. Because if they only attack from one way, they would for sure lose. That's why they have to hit us from the air and with our water and with our foods. All those preservatives that don't preserve anything, come on. You think they're there for a reason? The same companies that make everything, that run all the media, that own all the things, they're all run by the same 2 or 3 companies. And those are the companies telling them what to do. Vanguard, Blackbird, Blackstone, Blackbird. Those companies, they run everything. They're the major stockholders in everything. Nobody knows who owns them. Illuminati. Well, and that's what it is. And it's not crazy. You can go look it up. You just look up at any one of these sites on the Wall Street or whatever. You can look up these companies and you can find out who their major stockholders are, because they have to declare it. There's only one in the world that doesn't declare who their stockholders are. And as the top one, Vanguard. So, spiritual therapy. If we are in a spiritual war, and God has told us that you fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spirits of the air. You fight not against flesh and blood around you, but against principalities and spirits of the air. Then you fight with spiritual weapons. You can't fight a spirit with bullets, guns, or even words. Well, you can with words. But there are spiritual truths that Jesus himself has taught us. And if we can apply those same spiritual truths, you can defeat these spiritual entities. And then you can use your spiritual strengths that God has given you to overcome any physical issue that you might deal with. Let's go through some of them. Jesus walked up and he saw somebody, Juan O Seven was talking about this, saw somebody sitting at Bethesda, sitting there watching the water. The man didn't know who he was, didn't know he was Jesus. He asked the man, "What are you doing?" And the man said, "I'm watching the water." Why? Because if it stirs and I could get in first, I would be healed. Angel stirs the water. They commonly knew that. Must have been people who did it. Otherwise, if it didn't work, people would, they would give up after a while, but it must have happened. It must have happened. So they sat there and watched the water, waiting for it to stir. How long you been here? Long time. 17 years. I don't remember how many. Many years. And you've been here 17 years, that many years? Yes, because I have nobody to lift me up. Other people have people to lift them and put them in. They pay for people to do that. By the time I see it move and I start to make a move, somebody else has stepped in my place. Jesus says, well, what if I told you you don't need that? And he reaches out his hand, and the man reaches up in faith and takes his hand and he lifts him up. Now pick up your mat and go. And the man listens and he picks up his mat. He didn't need his mat, but he picked up his mat and he went. He became a billboard. Somebody walked, hey, aren't you the guy with the mat over there by Bethesda? You're walking now. What happened? Yeah, this guy, Jesus, he told me to pick it up. God healed me. Hey, aren't you that guy with the mat? Dang, there goes that guy with the mat. Jesus healed him. And so that message goes. People come to him, lepers. What would you have me do? We would be clean. Go rinse yourself in the Jordan, you'll be clean. And off they go. Hey, he said all we have to do is go to the Jordan. And they're going. And as they're running, one goes, wait a minute. He stops, he turns back, goes, thank you. And Jesus was amazed. Like, of all the people that were healed, that's the first one that said, thank you. That's nice. He wasn't healed yet. He hadn't gotten to the Jordan yet. But he believed. Belief. These things, there's a physical component, very small. The injections are a few milligrams, a few grams of water or whatever material they have in them. And then they might have a few milligrams, micrograms, grams of different components, few cells of this cruisy, tripensono cruisy thing, few of those in this big, vast body that we have with this resistance. Now, those things have a spiritual side to them too. There's a curse behind them. There's an intent to harm the people that they're given to. Listen to me very closely on this. Everything produced in this world is created from the same creative energy. God spoke it into being with his mouth. Let there be light, let there be land, let there be plants, all of these things. Remember Genesis? And they were good. Even diseases. In this particular case, are man-made constructs that have intention behind them. Maybe witchcraft. I don't believe in witchcraft. Well, which has been around for a long time. They use a lot of the same components that they use in witchcraft in a lot of the medicines that we take, especially in the chemo medicines. Mercury, formaldehyde, different things like that. Cyanide. Those are components that were commonly used in witchcraft to do nefarious things. Now you take this bottle. It's a good bottle. I like this bottle. It's got carbonated water. I drink a lot of this because it's more on the alkaline side to neutralize this acids in my body. So I drink a lot of this, maybe a couple of these a day. Very good for people. The bottle, you can bless this water. Marsara Mudo, I'm not going to get into it, but you can bless the water by saying good or peace, joy, clean me, refresh my body, cleanse my liver. You can command it to do whatever you want, and it will do it. Other articles I've done about water, but you can read about them, but I'm just getting into therapeutics here. This water bottle can be used for good. If someone picked up this bottle and came and smashed it over my head, the same bottle could be used for darkness. Same material, a dark intent or a good intent, depending on the person wielding it. The pharmaceutical industry wields these with intent. I had heard recently that a nurse came out on Charlie Ward and was talking about the fact that there were 3 barcodes. We'll just call them 1, 2, and 3 of one of these. I think for Moderna. And on one, if you used number 1, it had like almost a placebo, almost like a saline. Number 2 was a moderate, but kind of the one that's described in the literature as what it has, all the different components. And then 3 was an extremely, almost lethal form. And when people would come in to the hospital where she was working, the administration would tell her what bottle to give. And she knew that 1 was placebo or saline, 2 was middle, and 3 was harmful. And a lot of times the elderly or people that were sickly were given 3. That would actually make them worse or kill them. So this nurse, they said they started, her and her colleagues figured this out, and were basically lying, cheating, whatever they were doing, not cheating, but they were sneaking and getting only ones and giving only the ones out to everybody. They soon were found out, and they were either reprimanded or fired or both. And so was it. Bravely attempted. When you work for the system, I used to work for a home health company, and they were eager to go in and make sure to give everybody that they treated this right off the bat. And I don't know if they knew that they weren't good for the people, but in many cases, there was no reason, since these people were already isolated and at home, why would they need to have an inoculation against a disease if they were already quarantined and have no chance of contracting it? Yet they were eager to give it. I was not willing to participate in that scenario. As a matter of fact, I would oftentimes warn the people off of taking it. It cost me. I couldn't work for this company for very long. Nor would I tell the patient that I wanted them to wear one, because I felt it was bad for them. It's depressing. It's oppressive. It is a proven fact that if you are depressed psychologically, it reduces your resistance. When you're oppressed or put under a great deal of stress, down goes your resistance. When you take certain medications, down goes your resistance. When you take this, down goes your resistance. When you eat acidic foods, down goes your resistance. When you drink poisons, down goes your resistance. When you drink a lot of alcohol, down goes your resistance. When you smoke, down goes your resistance. Get it? When you watch depressive TV, down goes your resistance. When you're being oppressed, overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, cheated, lied to, down goes your resistance. What brings your resistance up? Lifting up. What brings your resistance up? Guess what? Adding truth brings your resistance up. Peace, love, joy, happiness, resistance goes up. All good things come from God. All good things, love, peace, joy, compassion, practice those things. Up goes your resistance. Bring in truths about what's going on in the world. That, okay, you inadvertently took this before you realized. What do you do now? Well, I know one thing you can do. Raise your resistance. How do I do that? Start looking to God. Start asking the vital question. I know not because I ask not, so I'm asking. What do I do? Tell me. And then sit back and wait for him to tell you. I know not because I ask not, so I'm asking. I know not because I ask not, so I'm asking. I have not because I've asked not, so I'm asking. God, help me. That's what I did on that day in 2008 when I thought I was going to lose everything. I called out to God. God, help. And he answered. Do you know what God is? God is like a father who sits there and watches his child play. And the child, I have a little experience of this because I have children. Imagine a little girl, little boy, not even a year old, barely, but able to sit up, but not yet able to stand. Imagine a baby, your baby, playing with a block. I know about this. And she's looking at it. Ooh. 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 Ooh, turning it over and discovering the sides of the block over and over again. And then imagine the father watching his child discovering life. And that smile on her face as she discovers this life. Oh. And every once in a while, she looks up just to make sure Daddy's watching. Yeah, he's still there. He's watching. And a little smile. And back at the block again. Because she knows she's safe. He's watching. And she's walking back to the block. And then comes the moment. And she reaches out and wants to hand you the block that she just discovered. Oh. Yeah, I wouldn't call it breaking your heart. Making your heart is the better word. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. I remember that moment for the rest of my life. And our Father looks at every one of us, everyone at you, exactly the same. Because in his eyes, we're just little babies. And then to think that there are people out here that take little children and can inflict harm, rape, kill, do this too, knowing it's going to hurt them or harm them. Oh, I can't even imagine what the Father thinks, because I know what I think if they did that to my kid. They would be mercy going to giving themselves up. And I'm just a normal father. I don't have the infinite love that that guy does. That guy. So what can we do from a spiritual standpoint when we know the truth? We open up the door for laws, spiritual laws. It's in this book. One of the laws is light always causes darkness to flee. Always. Not sometimes. Not some light and some darkness is stronger. The devil's too strong. No, he's not. Always flees. So in your universe, the universe of Peter Colla, universe of Anna Colla, universe of David Nino Rodriguez, the universe of Juan O Seven, who I still think is JFK Jr. But Nino says no, but it looks like it to me. Anyways, in that universe, when you discover a truth about this, you have put the light on it. God, I know the truth. So by putting the light in your universe, the universe that you're in charge of, that includes your children, by the way. We'll get into that a little in another video. Everything under your responsibility, the elderly that are under your responsibility, and your children. By you putting the light in your universe, it scares away the darkness. So now, the hand that is driving the bottle is gone. Now it's just this inert bottle. When I was in college, I worked for a doctor, and he was studying this particular type of amoeba. This one when I was doing immunology. Very rare. Amoebas are everywhere. But this amoeba, for whatever reason, decides when you've eaten it to bore a hole from your stomach to your brain and then multiply, and you're dead within weeks. No cure. Amoeba just makes a decision. I'm going to attack from the stomach. So the amoeba can be on an orange. It could be in a pond that you swim. It could be on an egg. Or it could be just on your hands. They're everywhere. And they were finding people who have died with these amoebas. And there wasn't very many, but it would happen like 1 in 10 million people or 100 million people. So there was maybe a few deaths a year. I'm sorry, no stickles for my sneezing. And they would investigate that and try to figure out why. So they take samples for these people that have died, and they sent it to this doctor, and he had samples from this one from New Guinea, and this one from Africa, and this one from China, and this one from America, Chicago and the other one maybe from New York. And the diets were completely different. And there was no rational reason why these amoebas suddenly decided to attack. So it was his job to figure out what was different about these amoebas than regular amoebas. So he could figure out what sparked them. Hadn't figured it out yet by the time I left school there. But when you think about it, take away, let's say there is a spiritual thing. Let's say there was something in their blood that triggered the amoeba. Possible. Maybe they had gotten, like that one scientist, they had all the components, the pieces there. And so when the amoeba came along and found the right poisons, boom, off it went in a tirade. Possible. Now, let's say there is a large spiritual thing behind this stuff. Let's say that there is a nefarious, because we're in an end times war that is mainly spiritual, battles being fought, principalities and spirits of the air, that they might be a very cursed, dark, sinister intent behind these. They intend to reduce the population. I said it. They've been talking about it for many, many years. You know, whatever, Agenda 21, Agenda 2020, Agenda this, that, Agenda baloney, Agenda Al Gore, Agenda Stones of Georgia, whatever thing, Guidestone. It's all a bunch of baloney. Like I said, if they could get what they wanted, they would have killed themselves long ago. They can't, even if they intend to. But let's say that's their intent. So the little witchy poos all get together and they put their curses on this stuff and send it out the door. And that's what they hope for. And there's this curse that's attached to this stuff. So you accidentally, or you didn't really know, and you got it, or your mother got it, but she's under your responsibility. And so now you put your vision on, you say to, and you claim it with your words. I know what your intent is, and we're not having it. Go, leave. You can use the big word if you want. In the name of Jesus, go, and it'll go. It has to. It has no choice. Light always scares away dark. And that only leaves this inert little amoeba thing that can't move on its own. It has to be told what to do. Okay, and the curse is gone. So it can't come back unless you invite it back with another booster, whatever. Hey, but so now what do you do? Well, you could do like Juan O Seven and Nino did. You can go see a nuclear scientist and they can go through an expensive and, probably very effective electromagnetic type of, removal scenario to get the particles out of your body and somehow encapsulate them and remove them out. Yeah, you can do that. There's many ways to clean up a garden. You can go out there with a rake. You can go up there with a mower. You can go out there with a hose. You can go out there and just pick them out yourself with your hands. There are many ways to skin a cat. I just want to skin a cat. I like cats. I have little kittens right there. Brand new, a couple weeks old. My point is the cleanup. If you survive the attack, all these attacks are meant to kill you, including this. So if you survive, you can take it and just sit there, or you can overcome it by saying, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm going to beat it. I'm going past this bully, and I'm going to keep going the way God wants me to go. And how do you do that? Any way you can. There are many ways. You can take this water that's been blessed, and you can flush it out by just telling the water what you want it to do. Cleanse that stuff out of my body. And you drink it, and it will go. You can do that. You can fast and kick in autophagy for intermittent fasting, and your body will clean it up itself. Autophagy is auto-eating, eating the waste products that your body doesn't need. But it only kicks it in when you do it in intermittent fasting. You have to keep your food intake less than 9 hours. Simple as that. If you start eating food in the morning at 10 o'clock, then you're done around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. No more food. Coffee milk counts as food. So if you do like me, I just drink coffee in the morning. No food till noon. That way I can eat my little snack at 8 o'clock at night. And then this autophagy still kicks in. And my body recycles every night. Kicks in the immune system, replenishes the liver, replenishes the pancreas, replenishes the kidneys, replenishes your hormones, ladies and gentlemen. I'm 60 years old. My hormones work just fine. You see my wife? It's pretty good looking. Yeah, the Anna part of the, hey, the hormones work great. No need for any help. That's what they're there for. And when you work with and you're not poisoning your system, and you reduce your poisons, these people are all afraid of all these components of the thing. Those components, we've been getting those components in our foods and these things for years. And now they're talking about it. But the talk also makes you fear. One thing I learned in my hunting years, I used to hunt. Anna won't let me hunt anymore. She doesn't like that, so I don't hunt anymore. Used to hunt. One thing I learned, that when you are in the forest, if you're afraid, you become the hunted. It's true. It doesn't matter if you got a gun or not. If you're out in the forest and suddenly you start to become afraid, before you know it, something will appear hunting you. It's almost like they can smell you. I know this from experience. One time I went down in Hell's Canyon when I was hunting. Hiked all the way down there by myself. I was with my father, but he was up there sleeping in the camp. And I decided, beautiful canyon, walk all the way down there. I hiked 6-7 miles down into this thing. And I was down at the bottom. And then I realized I only had one bullet in my gun. And then I got afraid. So I thought, one bullet is not a lot. What if I went into a bear? Just that thought. And suddenly, and I could hear something coming down the edge of the canyon. And boy, did that hair, and I had hair in those days, that hair stood up. I thought, ooh, one bullet, I better get out of here. I hightailed down that canyon and climbed up somewhere, maybe a mile or two down the way. I was out of there. That's what it does. That's what happens when you are afraid. It attracts attacks. The Spirit of God. I ask God, tell me about this stuff. And he tells me. And he usually says, the kingdom of God is, and then shows me an image, and then I write it down. Recently, I was asking about this and about sicknesses. He said, if you want to understand sickness, the Spirit of God in relations to sickness is a scuba diver. I mean, he didn't even say the scuba diver. He just showed me an image of scuba diver. So the sickness is as a scuba diver. Yep. Well, how does that work? And then he showed me. I used to scuba dive. Not a lot, 20, 30 dives, but I did it when I was younger, my 20s. When you would go down, you descend, and then you get to a certain depth, you put a little air in your vest, your buoyancy vest, and it stops you from descending any further because the air keeps you floating. The weights are countered by the amount of air in your vest. So you can lay flat and you can swim maybe 30 feet above the surface of the bottom. So I had this image of a scuba diver swimming at about 30 feet above the surface, white sandy bottom. When God said, the kingdom of God is as this. And then I heard his voice say again, and darkness dwelled upon the surface of the deep. And suddenly I could see two shadows off in the distance, coming closer and closer, and they're doing this, going in and out and in and out. There's sharks along the bottom, two of them. And they were looking for prey that happens to find itself stuck on the bottom or lingering on the surface of the deep, on the bottom. And I realized that's where sickness dwells. It dwells on the surface, not in the air. The sharks can swim underneath you. Now you would think, well, that would probably scare me well, maybe the first time I might have got a little scared, but after a few times I realized that they're not going to attack me because I just lay here calmly, swimming along. I take a deeper breath. I go a little higher, breathe out a little bit. I go a little lower, but I can see them. They don't even see me because they're looking down. They're looking for food. They're looking for victims. I'm 30 feet above. Now, if I start thrashing about and hurry to the surface, yeah, they might attack then because of the fear would attract. But if I just calmly watch and observe, they're pretty much going to just do their thing. The people, we are in an end times war. So many of these things have been constructed, pills with all kinds of byproducts and constructed. One of my best friends told me, he's a leading doctor for addiction specialist. He said that the worst pills on the market were the psychotropic drugs, mainly the Prozacs, lithiums, but all the other ones, pain pills, sleeping pills, anti-anxiety pills, etc. I said to him, well, he was a mixed martial artist, still in his 50s, 60s. I said, practice, but still do. I said, what do you take? Obviously, you mixed martial arts, you're going to get, I do a little bit of that myself. I don't do mixed martial arts, but I do martial arts. So I know when you get in and do some sparring, you're going to get sore, especially when someone whacks you. And he said, yeah. I said, what do you take? I said, do you take anything? What is your pain pill? He goes, I wouldn't touch that stuff. He said, I might use some of the older stuff that's on the market if I'm really, really bad off, but those are getting harder and harder to find. The new stuff, he said, no. I said, why? I said, I thought the new stuff was better. He goes, no, it's worse. It's been synthesized. The new pain medications are synthesized to cause you to be depressed. Then you have to take a depression pill. And those pills have been synthesized to cause anxiety. So then you have to take anti-anxiety pills, or they might cause you to be sleepless. So you're going to have to take sleeping pills. When you take 2 or 3 or more in conjunction with each other, sleeping pill, anxiety pill, pain pill, they cause you to have suicidal thoughts or thoughts to kill yourself. He said, I talked with hundreds of people and they all tell me the same thing. He says, I won't touch that stuff. There are people out there who have been lied to and have been given this stuff and told it was for their health when in fact it was leading to their death. There have been people out there who've been lied to, the elderly, and been told that this stuff is for their good when in fact it's leading to their death. I have a patient who went, ask me how many of my patients that I still see. I see people. Some people call me and they want to know a little more spiritual applications of therapy. You can call me at posture.is.everything@gmail.com. And I'll set up a meeting and I can talk. I have to charge you, but I will do it. I treat those people during the week. I have patients and I try to treat them not only with the physical therapies, but with the mental and the spiritual sides so that they can take complete control of their issues and drive away those spirits so that they can find healing, like I've talked about in these books. In these particular cases where people are taking this stuff and suffering, there are, unfortunately, because we are at war, innocent people are finding to be victims. Everybody's talking about, everyone's frustrated. My wife is probably the most frustrated. I saw frustration today in Nino Rodriguez's face when he was interviewing Juan O Seven. How long are we going to have to keep doing this? How many people have to die? This is a great war between good and evil. I really believe that my first wife did not die in a car accident, a random car accident, but was taken. I have reason to believe that based on some evidence that I have recently found. But to think the system that it would take to take a single child, when you think about it, not only do they have to follow the child and know the patterns of the parents, but then they need to abduct the child in such a way that the parent thinks either that they died or that they're not coming back. Then they have to transport the child, house it, feed it, and get it to the location where it needs to go to. And at the same time, they have to make sure that the law enforcement doesn't find out, that the media doesn't cover it, the loss of the child, that the educational system in and around doesn't somehow know or is party to the situation, AKA it takes almost a whole village of people to abduct a single child or to abduct a woman for a sacrifice with a bunch of witchy poos that may need it for their nefarious bull crap. Warlocks. Masons. Yeah, Masons have to kill somebody to move up from the 32nd to the 33rd. They have to do a sacrifice. Made men, mafiosos, have to sacrifice somebody to be made. A sacrifice needs to be made. That's why they're called made men. Well, that's not what. Baloney. The sacrifice has to be made so that they can write it in the book. It needs to be in the book. The books are open. We're not taking any new made men because the book's not open. What book you talking about? It's all real. How many does it take to keep the secret silent? 10, 20? Let's say you can do it with 10. And there's how many millions of kids a year taken? I would venture to say, if there are as many as my wife seems to think, let's say there's 8 million. And let's say it takes 20 per kid to not only get them, research, develop, take them the whatever they're trying to get from them, transport, feed, hide it, get the judges, get the schools, get everyone that is somehow tied up to it to be quiet. 20 is probably a pretty good amount. Times 10 million, rounded off. 20 times 10 million. 200 million people are involved in this worldwide program to take kids and people, innocent people, for satanic purposes, ritualistic killing, raping. And we're not even talking about the ones involved in this that have pushed that, developed it, and pushed it on innocent people, knowing what it's going to do, knowing that they're hurting people. Okay, that's a whole bunch of people as well that have profited by diagnosing them with the wrong diagnosis, knowing it might kill them. They don't care as long as they get their $30,000. So let's just say it's, even if it is 200 million, that's a lot of people. A lot of people to round up. No wonder it's taking so long. They call it the Hydra for a reason. You know, the mythological Hydra, you couldn't cut off its head because it would just grow two back. It would be worse than it was before. You had to find the whole creature and destroy the whole creature, every little bit. That's what we got to do here. They have to find all 200 million of them. And they've got to catch them in such a way and grab them that they don't go hide. Because I guarantee you, if a few of them were able to get away, they would. No, they got to, it's going to take some work. But you know what? And it won't be a man that does it, just like Juan O Seven. A man can't do it. It's too big. A country can't do it. Too big. An army can't do it. Too big. Trump can't do it. All these guys that even planned as much as they can't do it. It's too big. Only God can do it. And he's doing it. And he's going to use their very things that they were using for us. Their very plan will fall back on them. That's how it works. When a curse is put out by a witch or a warlock and it doesn't work, it comes back on them with holistic results. That usually means they're ripped apart because the spirit does not like to be, first of all, it doesn't like to be told what to do in the first place. And secondly, it does not like to fail. So I think I'll end this video and get it sent on through. I hope it helped you. This is an ode to the fallen. They are all the fallen who have fallen victim because of this or because of some ritualistic sacrifice. They did it because it was against an attempt against God to hurt God, to hurt the Father who's watching his child. And that means they're all martyrs in Christ, that they died sacrificing, giving their life for God. No better reward can a man or a person, any person at all, receive than to give their life for God. And if you believe, like I believe, when Jesus comes back, all the souls that die during this time will return with him. I believe that. I still believe that's going to happen. So these people that have suffered and died in this end times war that we've been living with for quite a while, the ones who are innocent they will come back. And just because someone is deceived with medication and decides to do this, I don't believe that. I still believe they're being deceived. No worse than a soldier that is being told, hey, you've lost the war. Come on, give up now. And he gets up out of his foxhole and walks across just to be shot. Some people say he killed himself. No, he was deceived. I hope this helped you. Again, we don't do any kind of monetization. Our books are available. Heal Yourself for God's Sake on Amazon. The link is below. Quantum Ascension, how it works. We also have a GoFundMe. We want to open our office back up and start treating people that may not have money, but only with cash. I won't deal with insurance companies. No, because they tell you what to do and they tell you they limit the care. So I'm done with them. If you got any questions, you want to call me directly, or if you'd like me to speak on your show, I would love to speak with Mel and some of the other people. I've already been on Charlie, and I'm probably going to be on Charlie again soon, and maybe on Nino again soon, or somebody else, one of the other people out there. I would gladly meet and talk with any of you. Give me a call. My email address is posture, POSTURE .is everything EVERYTHING You can also look at our website. I get the link below, Gems of Health and Wellness with dashes in between. And you can also contact if you're interested in the Patriots Push with Anna, David Nino Rodriguez's Patriots Push. My wife Anna works with David, and you can be on her team. The link is also below. Bless you, and I hope that this helped you. And I look forward to talking to you again.